The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are simply that, opinions. All are presumed innocent until proven otherwise in a court of law. Sensitive topics are discussed. Discretion is advised.
Welcome to Vinnie Politan Investigates. Child sex abuse cases are difficult, and most of the time it's someone very close to the child who is responsible, which makes it even more challenging. Now imagine the world of 13-year-old Madeline Soto, sent to sleep in a bed with her mom's boyfriend by her own mother. Now that man is accused of abusing and killing that child. I've covered this case in depth on my weeknight show, Closing Arguments, and what you're about to see are some of the most important moments from that program as I investigate the tragic life and death of Madeline Soto. Madeline Soto's 13th birthday party was on Sunday, February 25th. The party was at a relative's house, and she was surrounded by family. But one person who wasn't there was her mother, Jen Soto. She was working. Madeline's mother and father were not together. In fact, her dad married another woman a couple of months after she was born. But there was a man living in her house, her mom's boyfriend, Stephan Sterns. Sterns was at the birthday party, and at some point after the party and before she was supposed to be at school the next day, Madeline was murdered. Sterns was the last known person to be with her, and he is alleged to have hundreds of disturbing photos on his phone of Madeline being sexually abused. Sterns has been charged in 2 separate cases. The first for the sexual abuse of Madeline depicted on his phone, and the second for the murder of Madeline. New information has been released in the case, and we are going to analyze that evidence. We'll listen to key parts of Sterns' 43-minute police interview.
We got out the door maybe 7:30-ish, 7:45-ish, maybe. Got over to that area. She was asleep in the car most of the time, just snoozing until we got there.
And we'll look at the evidence connected to Madeline's mother, including statements from her indicating she allowed her daughter to sleep in the same bed with Stephan when she wasn't home and sometimes when she was home. Could she be charged? We'll answer that question as we continue our investigation into the tragic life and death of Madeline Soto. So we have a lot of questions tonight. We're going to try to answer some of them. We're going to bring in some experts, and we're going to begin with Stephan Sterns, the defendant, the accused killer, because there's no charges against Jen Soto. She's not been charged, hasn't been named as a suspect, hasn't been eliminated. They say the investigation is continuing, but hasn't been named as a suspect, hasn't been charged with anything. Stephan Sterns has. So let's take a listen now to his story and what he told police.
So we woke up early. The plan was that we were going to get McDonald's breakfast on the way, so we made an amazingly good time getting out.
I don't mean to interrupt you, okay? Neither of us were here yesterday, so if you can be kind of like specific about like times and stuff like that, okay?
Woke up around 7:15, somewhere around there, which is an early start for us, but we had talked about getting McDonald's breakfast beforehand, so we wanted to make good time. We did make good time. We got out the door maybe 7:30-ish, 7:45-ish, maybe. Got over to that area. She was asleep in the car most of the time, just snoozing until we got there. We got to McDonald's. We're close to McDonald's. I said, "You still want it?" She wasn't interested in the McDonald's anymore, so we continued on. And she wanted to be dropped off a little down the ways from the school. She's got this phase that she's been into lately where she's very particular about what car she's seen getting out of in front of the school. She prefers her mom's car, but my cars are, I guess, kind of hoopties. I get it. It's an image thing. But that was sometime probably between 8:20 and 8:40-ish. Somewhere in there. It was along the stretch of the road that on the right side that has all the communities on it before you get to the overpass. We could see the overpass from where it was. So it was on that side, on that stretch of road, and that's where I dropped her off. She said she was going to go wait for her friends. She was going to go find them and hang out and wait for her friends. And I asked if that was going to be okay. She said, yeah, it's fine. Kids get dropped off early enough as it is. It's not totally unusual for that to happen. It's just not usually that early that I drop her off. I do school runs every once in a while for her. I said, okay. Let her out. Have a good day. Love you. Thanks. Love you too. And I turned around and was driving away and was watching her in my rearview mirror to make sure that she was going where she was supposed to go. And she was moving in that direction, but she was rummaging around in her backpack or something. What I assumed was probably headphones or something like that, but I found out later that she forgot her phone here, so she may have been rummaging for her phone. But she was still kind of making her way towards that direction, so it looked okay. It looked like any other day. And I just continued on.
After you dropped her off, what did you do?
They had talked to her for a minute. I made sure, is it all right that you're going early? Because it was still early. She said, yeah, it's fine. I'm going to hang out and wait for my friends to get there, which she does sometimes, so it didn't sound, outrageous or anything. And that was it. I told her to have a good day. I loved her. She told me she loved me too. I turned around to leave, and I was watching her in my rearview mirror. And she looked like she was walking in the right direction. She was rummaging in her bag a little bit, like I said, but still sort of just shambling in the right direction while she was doing it. So it looked normal. It looked okay.
The part that gets me is the rummaging through the bag. The backpack was found in the dumpster back at their subdivision. Like, he's on video at 7:35 at the dumpster, by the way. So we know for sure that's a lie. So you get an idea of what a lie sounds like from this man. Coming up next.
We know he's a liar. He's making this stuff up and he's getting caught. You could see in listen to his voice pitch, and he actually agrees with him. He goes, okay. It's because he knows.
Back to the Court TV podcast.
She wanted to be dropped off a little down the ways from the school. She's got this phase that she's been into lately where she's very particular about what car she's seen getting out of in front of the school. She prefers her mom's car, but my cars are, I guess, kind of hoopties. I get it. It's an image thing. But that was sometime probably between 8:20 and 8:40-ish. Somewhere in there. It was along the stretch of the road that on the right side that has all the communities on it. Before you get to the overpass. You could see the overpass from where it was. So it was on that side, on that stretch of road, and that's where I dropped her off. And she said she was going to go wait for her friends. She was going to go find them and hang out and wait for her friends. And I asked if that was going to be okay. She said, yeah, it's fine. Kids get dropped off early enough as it is. It's not totally unusual for that to happen. It's just not usually that early that I drop her off. I do school runs every once in a while for her.
What you say and how you say it reveals a lot. And when you're suspected in the disappearance of a child, it can be even more revealing. Here's more of our investigation into the case of Madeline Soto. Let's bring in our experts, special guest, clinical and forensic psychologist, researcher, expert on violent crime, and the author of The New Evil. Dr. Gary Brucato is back with us. Also joining us, human behavior expert, jury consultant, Susan Constantine. Great to see you both. Let me begin with you, Susan. As you listen to his voice, that the whole thing about rummaging through the backpack, we know that is him lying because of the backpack on video at the dumpster, and that's where the backpack is found. And he was there at 7:35. So what do you think and what do you hear in his voice, in his story?
Well, I have to tell you, as you guys all know, that he flunked the test like miserably. So, when you're looking at the language, but his overall voice is over explaining. He feels like he's a victim. You can feel and hear this kind of victimization in his vocal cords, and it's like he's overwhelmed. He's really tired. In fact, I think at some point he says, I had to take tranquilizers because I was just really overwhelmed. So it's really about him. He's a vulnerable narcissist. I've said this before, but overall, when I was looking at the statements, there's so much deception, Vinny. We need a whole show for just this, but I'd love to be able to break this down.
Okay. Dr. Gary Brucato, from your perspective, hearing him tell his story about what happened, and at this point they have not found Madeline. They are searching for a missing girl.
Well, my impression is that it sounds like somebody making up a story as it goes along. And it's important to remember that this interview is February 27th, and Madeline goes missing on February 26th. So we're talking about somebody who theoretically could have killed, eliminated a person after a long period of filming sexual abuses and things like that. Is less than 24 hours later is here presenting in the way that's being described here, with this kind of victimized tone and so forth. But there's also this quality of making a gallant effort to kind of try to sound like Father of the Year. You get this kind of father knows best quality to the story, where she's saying, I love you, and he's watching in the rearview mirror, making sure she's okay. But what we have alongside that picture is the picture of somebody who is making this big loving story about the backpack. And the backpack has been like unceremonially dumped into a trash can. The kid that he's talking about, he may very well have killed less than 24 hours before. And you wind up with this bone-chilling comparison between that story and the grim reality of what might have really happened. And it's sickening.
Okay, let's listen to another piece of the interview. And here, he's actually called out by the investigator who was interviewing him, because he has some information that is the exact opposite of what Sterns is saying. Let's watch or listen.
You make a U-turn, you go back to the McDonald's, but you said that she still doesn't want the McDonald's.
Still doesn't want it. She was just going to eat the Danishes that I had given her.
So you're going up here now, still northbound on Jungyoung Parkway. Mm-hmm. You make a left at Town Center this time.
Town Center, then make a right onto, yes.
And then you drop her off around like...
Dropped her off around halfway up the road there.
Okay. So keep in mind, all of this is still northbound.
Okay.
Right? You're still northbound on Jungyoung Parkway.
Northbound.
So why is your car seen going southbound at 8:10? I'll show you what location it is. McDonald's is over here. Mm-hmm. At 8:10, your car is seen going southbound at this intersection. So meaning going toward Kissimmee.
Mm-hmm. I had forgotten something. I had forgotten my gate clicker. I'm sorry. I forgot. I had gone back to the house real quick after we left because I forgot my gate clicker. I actually had to go through the front gate and use my parking pass to grab my clicker. So it was the wrong time. I'm sorry. Like I said, I was guesstimating these times. I'm not a morning person.
All right, Susan. This is like we've got a telephone booth with an elephant in it. But go ahead.
Oh my gosh. Well, he's just making this up on the fly, right? So he's kind of waiting what the police officer's saying, and he's trying to then fill in the blanks. That's what a lot of them do. What do you know? And then I've got to try to figure out and maneuver around all those facts that you have. And then he's coming up with excuses like, oh my goodness, I forgot to have my V8. I need to go back and go and get my my clicker. But when you look at his language, I mean, this is what's really astounding. If you just look over the whole big picture, one of the things I want you to pay attention to is every single time he gives you a timeline. When he mentions a time, we find that in statements, when they make them, there's somewhere in there that number they pull out at the top of their head was generally something to do with the murder or the crime or something to do with it. He used so many contractures and missing pronouns where he didn't put himself into the story. He'll say woke up, or doesn't put I woke up, or she's rustling through her backpack. She may have done that, another time. But he is like playing that as if it was happening in that present tense, but it may have happened before. So you have to see how this liar lies. And when you look at the totality of everything that he had spoken about, I mean, he is using the word after a lot, which is like passing of time. He uses justifications and minimizing his actions. He over-explains. I mean, he said the word so 26 times, Vinny, and then the word but. And but is what we call beholding the truth. Anything that is happening before that, you can even erase it, and then anything that comes after it, you should be very skeptical. And that's when he's talking about these backpacks. All these specific events, look through the statement. It is astounding, truly. I mean, there's 11 pages of it. I've made all these notes on here. It is outstanding. So anyway, overall, we know he's a liar. He's making this stuff up, and he's getting caught. You could see listen to his voice pitch, and he actually agrees with him. He goes, okay. It's because he knows. So then he's got to quickly conjure up something like, and come up with another story. But there's a long pause because he's listening to what the officer is saying. In the meantime, he is already constructing his next story.
It's unreal. As you described, not putting the pronouns in. Same exact thing happened in another case we're covering. Maya Miliete, her husband Larry, when he was telling his story to a reporter, he did the same exact thing. And his voice almost sounds similar in the way he's doing it. Still to come.
I think the fact that it was the phone that he seemed to get a little extra freaked about has to do with the fact that the phone figured so powerfully into his fantasy life. It is obviously the place where he kept all kinds of images of God knows what involving this child. The idea that now that private world was going to be shared with somebody else.
Back to the Court TV podcast.
There are many reasons why we don't want to be without our phone, like missing important calls or text messages. But for accused child sex abuser Stephan Sterns, it might have something to do with the hundreds of images allegedly found on his phone. Let's take a listen to a little bit more. And this is the moment, Dr. Gary Brucato, where he has to give up his phone. And we know what's on the phone. He knows what's on the phone. The officers are about to find out, but let's take a listen to how that goes.
In the meantime, while we're waiting for all this to get sorted out, I am going to hold on to your phone, okay? I'll give it back to you when we're done. Okay? Do you have any questions for us?
How long are you going to need my phone?
I'm not sure. I'm waiting for my supervisor to call me.
My dad. It's just my dad's using that to get a hold of me and get updates.
They can call Jen's phone.
Okay.
Did the other detective give you his business card?
I believe so.
Okay, well, here's mine in case you want it for any reason.
Okay.
Okay? Mm-hmm. Do you swear that everything you told us is true?
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. Thanks for your time.
All right, Dr. Gary Brucato, we also have to remember that the phone, when he handed it over, he said, oh, yeah, I accidentally did a factory reset on it yesterday.
Well, it fascinates me because with some of these types of people, one of the signs of lacking empathy is that you can't feel that other people could tell that your story is ridiculous, that you actually think they're believing you and that you're controlling them. And it's quite interesting. You imagine that stories like this might have worked on children, but they certainly don't work very well when trying to deceive an adult. And I think the fact that it was the phone that he seemed to get a little extra freaked about has to do with the fact that the phone figured so powerfully into his fantasy life. It is obviously the place where he kept all kinds of images of God knows what involving this child. But it wasn't only the idea of the culpability if those things were discovered, but the idea that now that private world was going to be shared with somebody else. And offenders with whom I've communicated discuss that kind of thing, resenting the idea that that fantasy is no longer within their control and that someone else is going to see it. And I'll say finally that a book title, Waiting to Happen, is the line that he says in the interview where he says, I'm not a morning person. And if you change the spelling of morning to M-O-U-R-N-I-N-G, I think you have the truth of the story here.
Absolutely. Let's take a listen to one more piece of his interview here. Again, here now he's talking, Susan, about those tranquilizers and his panic attacks.
I don't recall. You have to ask her if we went anywhere. I don't recall. I was so zonked out on Ativan at that point.
Okay.
Because I was a wreck. I don't think...
And this would have been when?
Yes, thank you.
I don't recall us going anywhere last night, but honestly, at that point, my brain was mush, and I was on so many tranquilizers to keep me stable. It's just...
You said Ativan?
Yeah.
Do you usually take that, or?
Yeah, I have a prescription. I haven't needed it in a long time, though. But
what's that for?
Anxiety.
Okay.
I was having these rolling panic attacks and breaking down crying, and it was the only way I could get to sleep last night. And then again this afternoon. So that's why I missed your calls. I'm sorry. I took an Ativan and conked out for a few hours. It's the only time when I'm not crying.
Guys, Susan, we have about 30 seconds here.
Okay, first of all, I want to mention one thing. I'm going to back up a little bit. Anytime somebody puts the word phone in their statement, it's generally associated with a crime scene. So we've seen that 4 times. Now, when we're listening to his Ativan deal, this is for him to kind of detach, and he's trying to conjure a story up because he's not going to be available. So that's what he's really telling you. All this other stuff is just smoke and mirrors. He's not available. He's having a hard time sleeping. When a parent loses their child, they're not sleeping or trying to sleep. They're out there looking for their kid.
Back to the Court TV podcast.
You know, there's a reason Mother's Day is a bigger celebration than Father's Day. It's because of that bond and the protective instinct that most moms have for their babies and their children. It really is something special. And today, many are wondering about the mother of Madeline Soto, a 13-year-old who was allegedly abused and killed by her mom's boyfriend.
We dropped her off at school, close to school. She wanted to walk the rest of the way. She was spotted walking by the church, by the middle school, on the cameras. They saw her hang out in the parking lot for a little bit and then get up and leave. They didn't see a vehicle or anything else. They just saw her walk away around 9 a.m. heading towards the school, but she never made it.
None of that is true, by the way. None of it. That's Madeline's mom, Jen Soto, speaking to WFTV down in Orlando. None of that is true. Like, it's all false. Now, was it based upon what Stephan Sterns was telling her? Did they together come up with the story? I don't know. Well, this story is completely devoid of any truth. Now, that's what she told the media. Let's get into what she is telling investigators, because I think that's a little bit more important, right? And no attack of we in the media, but what you tell investigators carries a little more weight. So Jen Soto completed a sworn written statement to the Orange County deputies to the following. Jen Soto stated on 2/26/24 at approximately 0800 hours, she saw Madeline getting ready for school. 8 o'clock in the morning, she saw her daughter getting ready for school. 8 a.m., approximately, okay? Now, let's go through some of the other pieces of the timeline that investigators have in this case. Sterns is spotted at 8:10. A license plate reader captured Stephan's vehicle with Florida tag, driving away from the school at 8:10. The school is like 20 minutes away. It's about 20 minutes away or so. And he's driving away from the school back towards Kissimmee, where they live, at 8:10. Again, she said she saw Madeline getting ready for school at 8. What else do we know? The sheriff, the Orange County sheriff, spoke about a couple other pieces of the timeline. Take a listen.
We have video evidence that shows Stephan Sterns discarding items in a dumpster in that apartment complex in Kissimmee at 7:35 on Monday, February 26th. Detectives later recovered Madeline's backpack and her school-issued laptop from that dumpster. At 8:19, we have evidence that shows Stephan Sterns returning to the complex, and Madeline was visible in that vehicle. We believe she was already dead at that time.
Okay, and that jives with the 8:10, right? 8:10, you're driving back towards Kissimmee. 8:19, you get back to the complex, and Madeline Soto's in the car. So she had to be in the car when they left. So let's go back. Again, she's saying 8 o'clock in the morning, she saw her getting ready for school. 7:35, he was already tossing out her laptop and backpack at the dumpster, which is near the back exit of the complex, by the way. Okay, let me bring in my guests, special guest joining us in Orlando, Florida, America's judge, retired judge of the 9th Judicial Circuit, the Honorable Belvin Perry, and also joining us, the state attorney for Palm Beach County, Dave Aronberg, who, Judge, he's a Harvard guy, okay? Harvard smarty. So we got a lot of brains here tonight between these two. Unbelievable. All right, I'll begin with you, Judge. Judge has to go first, Dave, sorry. That statement that she provided, seeing her getting ready for school at approximately 8 o'clock, is that a problem for her in terms of potential charges or liability? If not, what else do investigators need to try to demonstrate that she is perhaps involved in a cover-up, perhaps involved in disposing of her daughter's body?
Vinnie, unfortunately for her, as a friend of mine would say, the math is not mathing with that timeline. She's in deep trouble. She has verifiable lies that does not jive with the timeline. As they uncover more, she could be facing a multitude of charges in this particular case.
Let me ask you, Dave Aronberg, what do you see as potential avenues for prosecuting Jen Soto? What would you need? What sort of evidence? And nothing related to the sex crimes. I want to deal with those separately. So just with the murder, the cover-up, the disposing of the remains.
Well, it's good to be with you, Vinnie, and with the judge. I think the judge is right about the lying. You could possibly charge her with lying to law enforcement, but the real crime that I think she could be charged with, based on what we know now, is potential child neglect charges. Now, child abuse under Florida law under Section 827.03 includes child neglect, and neglect can be a second-degree felony punishable by up to 15 years in prison if a caregiver fails to provide a child with the necessary care, supervision, or services to maintain that child's physical and mental health. And if that neglect causes great bodily harm, which clearly occurred here, then it does rise to a secondary felony. That's the crime that she could be charged with, depending on the facts. Now, she may say that she has no intent to commit such a crime. But remember, we're not talking about intentional child abuse. We're talking about child neglect. And by its own terms, neglect doesn't mean intent. It just means that you're neglectful. And I think when you encourage your daughter to go sleep in a bed with your boyfriend in another room when you're not even there, then I think that meets the standards for child neglect.
All right, let's get to that. Let's take a look at that, because this, again, is part of the statement that was made by Jen Soto. She stated while they were together, they would either all sleep in the same bed, or Madeline would sleep with her when Stephan wasn't there. When asked if it was normal that Stephan and Madeline sleep together without her being there, she said yes. Jen Soto stated if she needed a good night's sleep due to her anxiety, she would ask them to sleep in a different bedroom. So, Judge, what would be necessary? How could you prove that she had any idea what was happening to her daughter? Would you need that to connect her to any of the, to connect Jen Soto to any of the sex crimes? I think that's the biggest question people have. Can she be connected to what Stephan Sterns was doing? Or do you need something more here than just allowing it to happen or sending them into the other room?
The problem that the state is going to have is connecting her with the sex crimes. Currently now, based upon what has been given to the public, and that's out in the public domain, we can't say what actually occurred besides her sleeping in the same bed. Logically, one could conclude that, but that's not enough proof at this time. I suspect that's the reason why this case is still being investigated and that they're taking a very close look at the mother. That's just not normal for that young lady to sleep with this guy, particularly when you look at the breaks between the dates of the sexual assaults. You have a break, then you have the assaults renewed. There's a lot going on that we don't know, and she holds the answers to those questions.
She does, and the question is she no longer speaking? Where is she? What is she saying at this point? Okay, so the bottom line here, what I'm hearing from both of you is that false statements to police potentially, child neglect potentially. Coming up next.
You know, the hope is, I think, for prosecutors is that they could get the mother to flip and to testify against her boyfriend. Maybe that's why they haven't charged her with a crime yet. She may not know anything. She may just be head in the sand, totally in the dark, totally clueless.
Now, back to the Court TV podcast.
How's the temperature feel?
Better than it was.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Don't know why they don't do that. You know, why don't they just kind of like at least give you a blanket, you know?
Core temperature was down. They told me there was like a degree or two lower than it should have been.
Wow.
I could regulate sleeping on bare metal. The first night I was on a concrete floor with a roll of toilet paper for a pillow. Nothing else. Begging for a blanket and a pad to sleep on for 2 days. I think they were supposed to do something like that.
That sounds rough, man. Please forgive my cough. I've been trying to get rid of it for the past like 2 or 3 days, and prior to that I had a really bad cold. And
I always found Ricola honeys,
you know, I like those, man, but have you ever tried the berry ones? The Ricola berry?
No.
Phenomenal. I can't get my kid to drink medicine. I gotta like mix it in his orange juice. For real, I gotta like literally like, here, drink orange juice because it's good for you. It's vitamin C, and you know, because he'll literally like not drink his medicine like at all. You grew up on a farm? Wow.
Sometimes we pick, a dozen stones every day. It's a 10, 11-year-old kid.
So you're from Georgia?
I'm from, I've been all over. I was born in Illinois. Lived in Georgia, Florida, and California. On rotation for most of my life.
Do prosecutors have the evidence, the proof, to prove that Stephan Sterns abused Madeline Soto? Here's more of our investigation.
She brings a lot of joy. She's a very good girl. It definitely doesn't feel the same around here if she's not here. She was so happy, too. She was looking forward to my visit here. She was looking forward to us all being together. She was just happy. She was just very happy. I loved her like she was my own.
Madeline Soto was not happy. She's telling her friends at age 13 she wanted to go live out in the woods, away from this monster and away from her mother. A lot of charges. He's been charged with her murder, but the first case, the first trial will be the sex abuse case. Those charges: sexual battery on a child under 12, 8 counts; sexual battery child 12 to 18, 5 counts; lewd or lascivious molestation, 7 counts; unlawful possession of materials depicting sexual performance by a child, 10 or more images, 40 counts of that. You take a look at the sex abuse, and I mean, it just goes on and on. Look at these dates. All these years, you've got one going all the way back to when she was about 8 years old. It is just unconscionable. Now, what I want you to take a look at now, his Google Drive is found, right? Several images and videos were located which depicted an apparent child with her breasts, her private parts, front and back, as the focal point of the pictures and videos, all right? Kind of zooming in on these parts. There were also pictures and videos depicting an apparent child's bottom, front, and mouth being penetrated by a man's sexual organ. The child was later identified as Madeline Soto. One folder that appeared dedicated to Madeline contained over 1,700 files. A majority of these photographs and videos showed Madeline in different sexual positions. While reviewing, and also what they had to do was match up the clothing. They observed several different pieces of clothing to include patterned underwear, shirts, blankets, and sheets. The detectives searching the residence were contacted and confirmed they found the same distinctive clothing worn by both Stephan and the victim in Stephan's room and the victim's room. And there's another way to identify, because some of these pictures, you're not seeing faces, right? They're zoomed in. You're not seeing faces. But the male organ observed penetrating the victim had a distinct marking on it, which consisted of a bright pinkish colored skin below the top until approximately a quarter of the length down the male organ. And the Orange County detectives had previously shown Jen Soto photographs, and she had identified them for identification purposes. But then when she was shown the photos of her daughter being abused, she said, I don't recognize any of this. They also made a request for DNA, a buccal swab from Sterns, blood, saliva, cells to be collected from him, photographs and swabs of his private regions, and clothing worn by him. So here's some of the evidence. Let's bring back our guest, Honorable Belvin Perry, Dave Aronberg. Dave, unfortunately, in the sex abuse case, the victim is no longer alive, cannot testify, won't be there. Will this be enough to prove it, even if the pictures are zoomed in and you're not seeing faces?
Oh yeah. I mean, they've got a lot there. I mean, in some of these cases, you don't have this kind of evidence. I mean, you have his own phone, his own drive. You have the acts occurring at the home where he lives, and you can identify the home pretty clearly. And so I think they've got him on these charges. And, you know, the hope is, I think, for prosecutors is that they could get the mother to flip and to testify against her boyfriend. Maybe that's why they haven't charged her with a crime yet. And I do realize that they don't have the mother dead to rights on the charges, but they still have enough. If they wanted to charge her, it's not overwhelming, but I think they're still trying to convince her to testify. But she may not know anything. She may just be head in the sand, totally in the dark, totally clueless, which goes to the neglect that we were discussing earlier.
Still to come.
First of all, the jury will see the photographs. The problem that this man has is in taking these photographs for his pleasure, they are now turned into his nightmare, which he richly deserves.
Back to the Court TV podcast.
A trial involving explicit images of child sex abuse is different. The rules are different, as is the process. So the question is, who gets to see the evidence? A lot of people, including myself, have questions about how this trial would work. We're talking about really explicit child pornography. If he takes this to trial, does the jury see the photos? How does that work inside of a courtroom? Does the defendant get another look at this stuff that he created?
First of all, the jury will see the photographs. More than likely, the judge will close the courtroom so that spectators would not be allowed to see those type of photographs. I suspect that the judge will only permit his attorneys under in-camera inspection to view those particular photographs. The problem that this man has is in taking these photographs for his pleasure, they are now turned into his nightmare, which he richly deserves.
The Honorable Belvin Perry, State Attorney Dave Aronberg, great to have you here. You guys know this stuff so well, and I'm glad we had your expertise tonight. Thanks so much, guys. The prosecution of Stephan Sterns for abusing Madeline Soto should be a straightforward case. There are a few challenges, including a victim who cannot testify, but the images speak louder than words, and I don't think the defense will have many words to refute them. But like every defendant in our system of justice, Stephan Sterns is still presumed innocent. I'm Vinnie Politan. Thanks for joining the investigation, and I'll see you weeknights at 8 p.m. Eastern on Closing Arguments.
There you have it. If you want to see more in-depth reporting on the latest true crime stories, you can see me every weeknight, 8 p.m. Eastern on Closing Arguments. Thank you so much for downloading. And as always, please don't forget to hug the kids.
This podcast is a production of Court TV. Go to CourtTV.com for more content, trials on demand, and to find out how to watch Court TV in your area.